Welcome back to Peak Humans, the podcast where we explore the tools, strategies, and mindsets that drive top performers to reach new heights. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. His name is Andrew Masanto. He's a serial entrepreneur with 3 successful exits, the co-founder of 2 cryptocurrency unicorns, Hedera Hashgraph and Reserve, and now the visionary co-founder behind Nillion, the world's first blind computation network. Andrew's achievements span industries. He co-founded Pet Lab Co., a thriving pet health company, studied at Icon Collective Music School, and launched the Anona movement, blending art and innovation for social impact. He's also a leader in the biohacking and longevity space, running biohackinggroup.com, where he shares cutting-edge insights on optimizing health and extending lifespan. So from blockchain to biohacking to pet care and creative arts, this episode is packed with inspiration and actionable insights. Let's dive into the incredible world of Andrew Masanto. Andrew, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, mate.
I'm excited to jump into this show with you. And of all the huge, amazing resume you have, the coolest thing about you, from my experience hanging out with you, which has been a few times now in New York and Puerto Rico, I think you're a very fun, curious, kind, down to earth guy, let alone all the achievements you've made. And I think that drives a lot of your success. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of your view on life and how you like to go about it?
Yeah, it's actually funny that I don't typically chain the accomplishments. When you put it like that, like you did in the intro, it makes me sound like 8 foot tall and shooting fireballs out of my ass. But
Yep.
that's generally not who I am, A, but B, not how I see myself and not how I present myself. I'm sort of like a goldfish. I forget the things I've done. The other day, I was looking at Hedera, and there was like 2.5 billion uh dollars being traded through it. And they I was like, I can't believe I actually started that, basically. So um, you know, I try to focus on the things have which are ahead of me as opposed to behind me. And I don't really register those accomplishments. I always consider the reinvention of personality as being sort of critical to a happy path in life. So when those entrepreneurs, they build companies and they're like, oh, that was the company I built. They really attach to it. It becomes part of their ego and identity. That is probably the complete opposite of the way I am. It also may actually be why I'm not high public profile, because I don't like being known for those specific things. I prefer to continually reinvent, if that makes sense.
I love that. That's awesome. I love
Mm.
that passion for curiosity and reinvention. And it sounds like you do it for the game, right? Not for the glory and the status, which I
I
think.
don't really do it for the game. I do it because I feel like that is just the way that a human um, accomplishes a peak happiness in life, internally, not externally.
Mm,
Externally, if you're constantly looking for external, people are gonna hate you, bro. It's just
yep.
gonna happen. You're constantly searching for internal happiness, then people can have whatever opinions they want. It just doesn't matter. In fact, the more polarizing you are, the greater the benefits are, I think, of, as long as you're polarizing right as opposed to polarizing for the sake of being polarizing, I think the greater the benefits are.
Absolutely. I love that. I read your article again, not to go down the status route, but I'm going to go to a deeper thread about it that you're going to appreciate. The Millionaire Maker, and how you focus on helping others achieve their goals. And one of the quotes you said in there, you said, once I made it, I realized that money didn't quite fulfill me like I once thought it would. I found helping others define and achieve their dreams made me much happier and less empty. So I love that it just reinforces your focus on helping others grow and achieve their dreams as well.
Yeah, I mean, you ever had that guy who gets rich and then buys a watch, buys cars, you know, uh, shows off to who though, right? It's like a status game that you're playing in life.
Yep.
And I think certain types of people, certain types of women and men resonate with that. And I don't necessarily think that that path is wrong if it's helping you accomplish your goals. But but I think it's important to also think about like what is the long term? The long term, and the Harvard study on happiness shows this. Several other what do you call it? Studies show this. Long term is the relationships that you make, not this bling bling that you're wearing to impress, the chick that you're trying to hook up with. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
And so over time, I've noticed that the more I focus on the relationships, these deep relationships with people who are worth having those relationships with, who are aligned with me by way of contribution to each other, myself to them, etc. The more I focus on those relationships, the better.
Mm.
Along the lines of that article, like the last person who like really joined my team long term was my chief of staff, Nathan. And he just became a paper millionaire, but still a millionaire, right? And I think he's going to achieve much greater than that soon as well. And so that sort of thing makes me feel, those people are going to stay. They're going to be there at your funeral. You know what I
Yep.
mean? You can count on them. I have, and I count my successes in those people, whilst also tipping a hat to the more superficial bullshit. It's there. You can play it, right? Sometimes it helps with short-term objectives, and there is a place and time for short-term objectives as well. But I don't want to be I want to play long-term games with long-term people, and then occasionally have the fun short-term game.
Yeah.
But typically speaking, the fun short-term game is just so you can understand what reality is actually like, i.e., like you go to a casino. If you've never gambled at a casino, if you've never felt the rush of winning black when you put like a couple of $1,000s on red and black and it changed the course of your Vegas trip or whatever, like have you really, do you really understand what it's like to be someone in that casino? Right. So this is what I mean. Like you have to play the games, whether it's the status games or the short-term games, in order to understand them. But it's like the difference between a slow and crushing assault or attack on a castle, or like a very sporadic one, a harassing one. And so what I'm trying to say is the way I like to think about life and relationships is, and a lot of things is, sure, play the short-term games to understand. It's like right now with crypto, like meme coins, right? I got friends who are making, and dude, it's not unlikely that someone at a casino wins. I recently had a buddy send me a voice note. He made like $30 million of trading meme coins, right? And he just cashed out. He's like, dude, that literally changed my life. Like
Yeah.
I in time where he was borrowing money of people. But his story is one of, I know another friend, I think possibly a mutually friend of ours, who lost everything on that gamble, everything, right? He's got to go back to scratch. So, I think he lost 20 million. That guy made 30 million. Like, it's, but understanding that game allows me to understand the games that people are playing. But what I've done in my life is try to build things which have longer term value, right? Not saying that trading isn't longer term value, but things that build longer term value that make other people wealthy as well. And that has led to just such like strong core relationships. I feel like, especially in the United States, it actually got a little too overwhelming in the United States. I can call anyone for anything and ask for anything.
Mm.
I just have a lot of those friends and loyalists because of the value that I've created for them, for their lives, not just by way of financially, by way of, with reference to that article that you're talking
Yeah.
uh, about the millionaire maker, but also by way of, I have the biohacking.com group. So I know some of the top biohackers. So health wise, I have doctors, I have very well-known doctors who have very large social media presences ask me for my opinions on things, right? On things which are where medicine is more specific to them as opposed to broad brushed. Like, what can I do about my problems with X, for example? So, you know, I wouldn't just say it's a singular dimension. Obviously, that article was in entrepreneur.com, so it's more like financially driven.
Yeah.
But there are other avenues through which I think about adding value, and that is the overall philosophy, i.e., play longer term. As I think Naval says, is play long term games with long term people. But what he doesn't say is that you should also understand the short term game. And if you don't understand the short term game, then it leads to a gap in your understanding of humanity in general,
Mm.
right? So it's like with dating, for example, like you know, I've had very long-term relationships, but I also know what a short-term relationship is like as well, right? I have this understanding, and because I have both, and because I have and am exploring both, it gives me a deeper understanding of humanity in general
Mm.
and of myself, right? So, but whether it's that or gambling or any sort of more short-term pursuit.
Yeah.
Yeah. The difficulty is when humans get drawn into those short-term pursuits, you get addicted, you can't get out of that cycle, and that's when we see many people like that. I'm sure several people who are stuck in short-term cycles,
Yep.
right? So, the trick is to understand when you're in a short-term cycle and then have a defined time of getting out, or really be self-analyzing as to what's happening internally to keep you in that cycle. Like, why am I constantly doing X or constantly doing Y? Or like, why am I gambling a lot? Why am I dating the same type of people? Why am I unable to focus, or choosing the wrong jobs or whatnot? Does that make sense?
Totally. I love that, man. That's an easier said than done for most people. I'm curious, do you have a framework on how to do that?
Yeah.
Uh,
So, yeah, sorry, go on.
no, well, and you said a little bit, right? Define the timelines, right? Make sure you analyze and reflect. But I'm curious, yeah, do you have can you go deeper into that?
Yeah, so I don't have a singular framework because different problems are multifaceted, right? I think the initial framework that I have is okay. So there are several tiers. The first framework is, man, suck it up and be a fucking man and get over it, right?
Yep.
That's not always the best framework, but it's a sort of masculine framework, right? It's
Yep.
like, and I think that like society is like moved so far away from that into a like therapy based system. I have a fucking therapist, right? But I'm also very critical about if I need that therapist
Yeah.
and talking to him about, and if it's the annuity of my income that like he wants, right? I'm like, I trust him, but I also apply critical thinking towards him, right? Um, but and uh I'm also very cognizant of the drives behind the emotions behind the drives that I have, right? So
Hmm.
it's like, oh, you want to start another company? Why do you want to start another company? What is creating that? What is the lack or the feeling that is creating that? And then I have to look into that further. Okay, is that ego? Why is it that I want to? This is just an example of starting a company, right? Um, like I ask myself why I want to do these things, and then I analyze where that comes from. But this isn't like, so firstly it's if it's something like, I don't know, a breakup, you break up with the girlfriend or something,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Or you have anxiety about something, right? So like these things are more like, dude, get over it, right? It's
Yep.
not like I want to see a fucking therapist. Look, sometimes you do, right? But like sometimes it's like suck it up and be a man, you know?
Yep.
Dude, like life isn't meant to be easy. It's designed to be challenging, because without the challenge, what would it be, right? So you have
Yep.
that. And for the other um, things, such as, so, we could be talking about, I mean, there's not a one size fits all, but, whether it's a gambling addiction or the way that you're approaching relationships or something that you're doing with money, etc. I would then take a look into, so what is the situation? Like you look at when you're feeling that emotion, and then you become curious about that emotion, and then you try and track it back to where it came from. And then what I think is the thing that is the most useful is, in a good state, then try and reinterpret the core event. If you can isolate the core event, try and reinterpret it to something else. And then, so for example, if it was a breakup, right? Then trying to take that breakup and reinterpreting it as, and this is like much easier said than done, but my life is so much better now, or so this is a breakup. I don't know. It depends on how recent it is. This is not a one size fits all. If you have a breakup, a good thing to do, for example, is to forget and then move on to, not move on to another thing, but do different things with your focus and attention. But
Yep.
then really think about it as what are the positives? What are the silver linings that you could have gotten from this? What are the silver linings? And then how can you be truly grateful for the things that have happened, such that were you to meet that person again, it'd be like, dude, almost like high five, check out how insane my life is. And if
Yeah.
your life isn't there yet, then maybe that's a sign that you should be moving towards that direction of the vision of the life that you actually wanted to live.
I love that.
Like
Yep.
that would make that person be like, fuck, man, I
Yeah.
didn't only fuck up, but that guy really fucking killed it, you know?
Yeah. I love that. And also, I want to point out, like, you've all, and which I think is great about you too, right? You invest a lot of time, energy, focus, money into yourself, right? In your personal development, right? That's my industry, right? Coaching, personal growth. But I know you've invested in a lot of events, coaches. I know you've been to Tony Robbins stuff. So I think that also helps with you being able to be aware of those emotions and how to be with them and transmute them too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that if a lot of people believe in something, especially if it's unpopular or contrarian,
Yeah.
usually something very right in there, and there's usually some wrong stuff in there as well. It's
Yeah.
very rare. It's very rare that a blanket approach to something works 100% for everyone, you know?
Yep.
So I think of, like, yeah, I have been a plat on the Tony Robbins program, but now I barely even listen to his stuff anymore. I
Yep.
have been to Joe Dispenza's week-long training course. Like, I go into cults, I like them, but and
Yeah.
I like to think that I find, oh, even, there are aspects of Scientology. I never became a Scientologist, but I had
Yeah.
a friend who's a Scientologist who taught me a lot of the deeper aspects. And I was like, dude, some of the stuff is really weird, but some of the stuff is very, very legitimate. I would
Yeah.
credit a couple of things that I learned there as being like the reasons why I became initially successful.
Yep.
So my point is that, like, you got to see when you have someone who is a very passionate, charismatic leader creating a cult, find the truths in what they're saying,
Yeah.
you know, and then um, take it, learn from it, and then apply it for yourself.
I
There's
love
another
that.
one. There's another book right now I'm kind of really into called Functional Patterns,
Yep.
and it's a super culty fitness thing, but they are really, you know, they hate on yoga. They hate on the founder gets online, hates on yoga, hates on deadlifts. I mean, it's very polarizing, and I kind of love that, right? I love that. I actually think that, like, it's far more iconic to have a lot of people either love you as a plus 10 or hate you as a negative 10. That
Mm,
is that is what I like to see within people. I'm trying
yeah.
to cultivate that to myself, to be honest. But
Yeah.
when that happens, there's usually a truth that
Yeah.
that is hard for people to accept, maybe even impossible for them to accept, because they've made choices in their lives that don't allow them to go back. So they have to accept a different truth. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and man, those are savage, savage truths when you fucked up like that, like, you know. That's just like the reality that you're in, So, so anyway, so yeah, I don't know if what was your question again? I don't remember. Oh, it was about the cult. So basically, my point is that when you go into these, I find that a lot of these self-improvement things, they have truths in them, nuggets of
Yeah.
truths, but accepting them as like you get these like fanboys, right?
Yep.
I don't believe in being like a non-critical fanboy. Even God gave you an analytical mind and life experiences to find out how you play the game of life, right? Like not to follow someone blindly into the fold.
Yep.
So I will follow someone blindly into the fold initially to understand, but the moment I can critically analyze a different way, or the moment something doesn't work, or I can think of things in other ways, that will change,
Mm.
right? So and I don't mean any disrespect to the people. I just apply things the way I think of them because I have free will and an analytical mind to be able to think of things my way.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's pretty powerful, right? Because most people, going back to the what we said earlier too, a little bit about how you kind of dip into the short term pleasures of life, but you're focused on the long term too. It's hard for people to do that, right? They get sucked in. Same with diving into these different like people go to yoga, they're all yoga, right? People go to Tony Robbins, they're all Tony Robbins. People go to Scientology, they go all into that. I think it's pretty cool. You're able to kind of like diving in and then coming back out.
I dive in with the intention to learn all and then get out,
Yeah. Yep.
right? Like, and sometimes I dive in and I'm like, man, this rabbit hole goes so deep, I'll never be able to understand the whole thing. But maybe
Yep.
I can get some nuggets that can give me an 80-20.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, so yeah,
I love that.
that's why that's in pretty much everything. Like all art forms are kind of like that, right? Like I
Yeah.
play I play guitar, for example, but I can't shred like fucking I don't know X Sting or whatever else.
Yeah.
But you give me, I'm at a point with guitar where I can hear a song. I may have to ask ChatGPT for the chords, and then I'll be able to play and sing it within 3 minutes. You know
Mm.
what I mean? That's a
Yeah.
fucking 80-20. I can
Yep.
songwrite with it as well. Like, yeah, I can't shred with it, but that's why that's okay. Like that would take another. So I've hit an efficient frontier of return for my exploring the guitar world, if you like.
Yeah. You can get a lot of joy and value out of it and create a lot of joy and value for other people out of it.
And that applies to all many other things.
Yeah. Do
I
you have
think
a
the critical
process for learning? Do you have a process for learning new skills?
just pure fucking unadulterated focus and talking to as many people around that skill who
Yeah.
get results or understand or you can sense have truth behind them.
Yeah.
Don't want what you really don't want, and what creates, I think, like mind viruses. I don't know how you can say it any other way. Is
Mhm.
when you take advice from people who are not facing truths. That is critical, and that's a disaster.
Yep.
They those things have truly led to the worst parts of the worst failures in my life has been when people are themselves convinced that they are doing, and they sometimes convince themselves and convince others via media, etc., etc. That is when you have a terrible outcome.
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't understand how to do X should know that they don't understand how to do X, and whatever X is what it is that you have to determine by your own, thinking if they know how to do or do not know how to do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. To me, it's the craziest thing when people aren't willing to be wrong or even like answer the question about things. Like when,
Well, it's sometimes it's not even about them being wrong. Sometimes they are self-deceived.
yeah.
That's poisonous.
Yeah.
Self-deception is worse. It's even worse than gaslighting.
Mm.
Because gaslighting, that you are pushing the other person towards something that is an untruth. With self-deception, you're bringing the person into your fold,
Yeah.
and you see what I'm saying? And you're actually deceived. So you're not actually doing anything wrong by your point of view. It's very hard to detect. And
Mm.
that's why the other person has to have a critical thinking mind. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
If someone senses they're self-deceiving, how would they go about getting out of that loop?
Wait, if someone senses that they are self-deceiving?
For themselves, maybe, right? If they're curious and wanting to maybe shift out of
Oh
that
no,
pattern.
you're not self-deceiving if you think you might be self-deceiving.
So you can't,
You,
so
you
okay, yeah. So
you are self-deceiving where you are 100% convinced of something
yeah,
without any possibility of where you haven't. Okay, you might be self-deceived when you're 100% convinced of something, and you irrationally do not look at the um the potential failings. So
yeah,
you don't look at the details, the potential failings, you know?
yep,
Um, I mean, but the other truth is that can also, this is why like it's hard because you have that self-deception. But I do know certain people who believe in things irrationally, right? Who have created insane outcomes. So
yeah,
that too, so it's a tough one because remember, what I said before was that the worst outcome is when you are self-deceived about something you are wrong about. But if you are self-deceived about something you're fucking right about, oh man, that's a different story.
that's true.
Bitcoin in 2011, Tesla in 2000, about the
Yeah,
same time. Um, several of my meme coin buddies, for example, like, you're
yep,
fucking crazy. Like, nope, Peanut's gonna go to like several billion. I'm like, okay, Peanut goes to
yep,
several billion, they sell out, right?
yep,
Like, so the two parts of that is you have to be self-deceived, and the second part is you have to be right or wrong, like one of the two,
yeah,
If
yeah,
you're right, different. But you can tell when someone's right sometimes by the amount they are critically looking at the thing that they're doing.
yep,
You know what I mean? How critical are they in it? And so it's a tough one. It's
yeah,
not like it's not an easy one to because that is also like a very powerful thing about humans, which is to believe in a future which doesn't yet exist. That's
yeah,
actually, to be honest, that's if you think about like Homo sapiens as a species, that's what separates a Homo sapien to either a chimp or a dog, etc. There are those things that those guys are kind of living in the moment. We are forward projecting. I'm like, well, if I go to university now, get a job, blah blah. Like I'm forward projecting my life, or physics cause and effect. Like, well, if I go out today, then I won't have the time to do my work today, which means these are high level cerebral functions which
yep,
separate humanity. And so, really thinking about so anyway, I think the point is that yeah, with self-deception, you want to really just think more about, is this something I want to put everything into it, like my belief into? What are the consequences of that? And have I looked into it myself very deeply to a point where I understand it and I'm confident
yeah,
without believing of other people like myself.
yep. I love that.
Yeah.
I appreciate bringing it back to what you said a little bit earlier. When you're focused more on the relationships that you're building in your life, in your business. How do you build great relationships?
So the first and most important thing is selection,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who do you want to build great relationships with? And great relationships don't always have to be like long term. You can have great short term relationships too. You just have to know what you're getting into. This is,
Mm.
within business, within r- romantic relationships, within all sorts of relationships, right? So, but you have to choose the right tool for the right task. So what is a good long term relationship? Well, looking for those types of people is going to be important. And the type of people I like to align with long term have loyalty, competence, and and I would say, yeah, I don't know. I think those two are probably the most important. There's probably a third one, but well, all the other ones kind of come with competence. So, for example, like not being stable is sort of makes you competent. I guess you can have unstable, competent people, but like, I think those two things and like a value add mentality. Oh, I would say um a good dispute resolution mechanism within that person.
Mm.
I think that's important for, because relationships will be tested over time. And so how that person deals with conflict, whether this is like a romantic or a business or whatever, is going to be important, how you and that person deal with conflict. So those that's for the long term. For the short term, I just make sure that both parties understand that they're engaging within a short-term relationship, i.e., like, hey, there's this trade that is going to work well. There's this like short-term business idea. There's this like hustle that we can do. I don't know, whatever it is. Let's hustle it, right? Let's
Yeah.
fucking go. So that's an example, and then over time, maybe short-term relationships can build into longer-term relationships. I think the mentality there is also one of the deepest failings that I see within long-term relationships is the concept that you have to stay in touch with the long-term relationship. That is complete bullshit, right? I have some of my best friends who I haven't spoken to because they live in California. I live in fucking London, right? Like we're miles apart. They're in a different industry to me, right? And when we talk once every couple of months, maybe via text message, right? But if I were to ever live there, or if we were to ever to have some form of exchange of value, I mean, relationships are really about the exchange of value,
Mm.
then it would happen at the speed of trust, basically, which is a very fast speed. Whereas like someone I didn't know, I wouldn't, there are guys I would trust $1 million with, right? Like, hey, here's $1 million, like send it back when, there are guys and you can't do that with people you've just met, right?
Yeah.
So my point is that I call it a social parking lot. Sometimes you have these long-term relationships which get parked into social parking lots. And I think the thing that you're looking for in the beginning to create a relationship is there are two ways to think about it. One is an exchange of value, a good exchange of value, not an exchange of value where you feel bad about something. That doesn't lead to a long-term relationship where it's like one part of the uh one party isn't delivering for the other party, for example, right? But one party that does not lead to good relationships. And
Yep.
the other is just what I call time and shared experience, right? Like relationship value, I guess. So you and me, I could get coffee every day, or we could go out to the same club, whatever, and I'll just see you all the fucking time. Or we could have the same interest on something outside of. I mean, I'm sure you've had friends where you were, when you were single, that you would just go out with. Like they're your going out buddies, drinking buddies, going out buddies, hitting on girl buddies. Like those are your buddies, right? And that is a glue. And then maybe one day you're like, oh, maybe we should do something outside of this together, blah, blah, right? Because you have that trust, that shared experience. So you have one, an accelerant, which is like an exchange of value. And the second thing you have is like time and shared experiences, which
Mm.
can also create relationships. And then, like I said, the danger is in ensuring that, hey, just because like someone doesn't talk to you for a while doesn't mean they don't like you, right?
Yep.
It's just that they're busy doing their own shit, man. Once you have an ability to transact or get together again, as long as the first transaction or the first relationship was positive, then I think it'll happen.
I love that. I love that social parking lot. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, good principle.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, actually, I didn't tell you since I saw you last in New York. Me and Josephina got engaged.
Oh, congratulations, man.
Yeah,
Wow,
thanks,
that's
man. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
that's a big. When's the any plans on the wedding?
Nothing scheduled yet. We're just kind of enjoying being engaged for at least a year. It was back in September now that we did it I did it at Disneyland, which was fun.
Hey, I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you how'd you do it.
Yeah. I did it at Disneyland. Kind of cliche, but she loves Disneyland. She always wanted to get married there. So I did it
Nice.
in front of the castle.
Oh, dude, did you get
Yeah.
someone recording it?
So here's what's crazy, bro. This is great. I'm going to share this all on the podcast. So I wanted to, well, one is my good friend, James Asquith. He did it at Disneyland with his now wife. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. It inspired me to think about doing it there. And I knew Josephina loved it and she always wanted to get married there. So I was going to have somebody record it, but it just happened so great in the progression that I'm like, oh, I got to do it now. Cause basically there was too many people in front of the castle. So I was like, fuck, I might not even do it today because there's too many people. And then I saw on the side at an angle there, I'm like, maybe I'll do it over there where it was more quiet. So I took her there over the bridge and she's like, oh, there's a wishing well. And then I was like, oh, and she's like, let's make a wish. So when she said that, I'm like, oh, now's the time to do it. So I couldn't I wanted to find somebody to record it, but I was like, I got to do it in the moment when she said that. And then also right after she said, let's make a wish, the bell of the castle rang like a fucking Disney movie. And I was like, oh, now I definitely got to do it right now. So then I got on my knee. Yeah. And I got on my knee and she was looking in the well. So she still didn't even know. And then like literally 2 seconds later, she turns around and I'm just sitting there. And then I hear all this clapping in the background. And I was like, it could be for us, but it could also be for all the other things going on at Disneyland, but it was for us. Yeah. But here's what's
Wow,
wild,
dude.
dude. So after we were kind of like just marinating in the glory, the beauty of it all, somebody came up to us after, bringing it back full circle to what you said about recording it, and he's like, "Hey, I recorded that for you. Do you want it?" And I was like, "No way." So we got the recording too, which is epic.
Great. That's
Yeah,
great, bro.
yeah.
I'm really happy for you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. But I bring it up because
Yeah,
it's a good example of what you said, right? Like we're friends. We haven't hung out too much, right? But the last time we hung out was in New York, and that was probably maybe 5, 6 months ago now. But again, I bring it up because of what you're saying, right? It's like you don't need to be talking to people all the time, and then you could drop in when the time is right. And again, I didn't share that big news with you until now because I didn't think of it because I have so many other people I'm still telling
right.
about it. So that's pretty cool.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, look, the reason I said yes to this podcast, I don't do podcasts very much or public appearances. It's because a lot of what I say, I know I'm wrong about. A lot of
Mhm.
the things I'm thinking, I know I'm wrong about. They're contextual truths layered with complexity, you
Yeah,
know. Uh, and so when I say things on podcasts, etc., it makes me I just know that some people are just it's just going to be some of it's just going to be wrong for different
yeah,
people, so I don't think it should give me anxiety. It doesn't so much give me anxiety. It's just like I know that I'm constantly in flux of the things that I'm thinking
yep,
as reality changes,
yep.
so
Yeah, then
so
people kind of take a snapshot of it, right? And at the
that's
worst
right.
case, they kind of start to say, "Oh, Andrew said this or that."
Correct.
I think that's also why Warren Buffett he doesn't like to do a lot of interviews too, right? Because like you, is like I'm never always right and wrong, and their things are always in flux. So
Exactly.
it was funny. I was also thinking some people could take sound bites, and like when you said the Scientology thing, I was gonna be like, Andrew, what's something you learned from Scientology? And I was like, maybe I'll take that as a sound bite. I wouldn't really do it, right? But I was just like, well, Scientology is great about this.
Yeah. That's funny. That's funny.
That would be my marketing clip for this whole podcast. Andrew
Yeah,
Masanto
yeah,
and
yeah.
Scientology.
Oh my God. See what I mean? Fuck, everything just gets taken out. All of a sudden, I'm this like Scientology guy. I'm like,
Yeah.
shit.
Oh
Uh,
man. Well, so what was it like, Andrew, having Richard Branson jump off a bridge into the water,
that's
chasing?
in his Instagram, actually. I don't know if you saw it.
I saw that the other day. I'm like, that's Andrew's content. You should have
That's a,
got some rights on that.
yeah, that was fun, man. Like, Richard's like super chill right now. Like, honestly, he's like living his best billionaire life. Like,
Yeah.
and dude, the guy imported an entire ecosystem into Necker Island. He has non-native flocks of flamingos, non-native lemurs, non-native kangaroos,
Wow.
non-native like there's just so much like he gets to be a billionaire on an island. Like, like SimCity, you could just build
Yeah.
shit.
Yep.
His life is SimCity. He's got like 3 full-time wildlife. I mean, if you really think about the math, I don't know how much he's worth, maybe like 2 billion something.
Yeah.
But like if you're earning even 2 to 3% interest on 2 billion, it's more money that you could spend. Like it's like 50 odd million or something like that. It's huge, right?
Yep.
So you gotta spend that a year. Like, what are you gonna spend it on? Right?
Yep.
So that's his life, man. He's super fun, and he's I asked him a question on the way up the hill when we were bike riding. I said, Richard, I don't have that many questions on you on business, to be honest, but what I'm really impressed about is how you had, like, you're a billionaire, and there are a lot of billionaires in this world, but more and more I hear about them, the more and more, like, I see divorces, broken relationships, etc. Whether you're looking at, like, if you look at like some of the top 3 entrepreneurs of the decade or the past couple of
Yeah.
decades, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. Zuckerberg is not, actually, if you think about, like, he's still with Priscilla, I think her name is.
Yeah.
But but it was, man,
Warren Buffett, Bill Gates.
Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. But Richard is actually, it's a 50+ year marriage. So
Wow. Yeah.
my question to him was, I mean, his answer was not satisfactory at that, but he's like, honestly, he said, I think I just got really lucky.
Mm.
So I don't know, man. Maybe, that's not a what do you call it? A answer that David Deutsch would find very satisfactory, but
Yeah.
in the philosophy of knowledge. But it is yet one which shows his perspective on life, and maybe there is a truth to it. Like, if you think you're lucky, you will be lucky. Whether it's in relationships um or other parts of
Yeah.
life.
I love that.
So
Live
yeah, but it
lucky.
was, it was fun, man. That guy's fit as fuck. Like, I, he almost killed me going. We were riding this hill, and he consistently went. We went to a different island to ride on this hill. Like, it wasn't even Necker, and he consistently told me that he was like, the last hill, the last hill, and dude, it was not the last hill. I got to the top of the other hill. He's like, well, you're only the second person to ever make it up here. He's like, maybe third. He goes, the first was a Tour de France winner. He does this like every 3 days, right? The second, he goes, was this guy from America, from New York or something, that threw up when you got to the top and you didn't throw up. And the third is you. I was like, okay, but man, I would not
Wow.
do that with that literally took everything out of me.
That's
So
nuts, man.
yeah,
That's
but
so
we
cool.
have a great picture with him. So no, he was a really cool guy, living, like I said, living his best billionaire life, the way that you probably would, like, having that much money. And I don't know even how much longer he has left on this world. So power to him for it, the things that he's created, but also the way that he's kind of living it in the way that he wants, and contributing value in the way that he wants as well. So really, really nice guy, actually. So I'm it was a great experience.
Nice. Were there any other lessons, or I'm sure there's a lot, right? Or any lessons or stories or memories from the experience?
Let me see. I popped champagne while on a e-foil.
On
That
the
was cool.
e-foil. I saw that one. That was cool.
Yeah.
Dude, that's
Richard,
impressive. I tried e-foiling, man. I couldn't even get up on that thing. And I'm like scared my head's gonna get sliced off the
listen,
plate.
dude. When you're hanging out on Richard Branson's island, there are 3 full-time water sports guys who are doing nothing except waiting for you to come up to them, asking them to teach you so that they can go out in the water. Like, they're
Uh,
just hanging out waiting for you. So every day I was like, I'll do 2 hours of whatever, like, and so for a week of just every day 2 hours of refoiling, trust me, bro, by the end you're killing it, you
that's
know?
awesome, man. That's cool. So you popped the champagne while you were doing it. Then you got to that
Yeah,
level.
yeah, yeah. Well, he encouraged us to really take advantage of the island,
Yeah.
um, and doing those sorts of things with him. And let me think. I
I
mean,
saw I
like,
saw you with the lemurs. That looked cool. You were playing
that
with
was
the
yeah,
lemurs.
yeah. Had the lemurs. I mean, we were there with a couple of other change makers, and he would. I remember this one time we were talking about longevity, and Richard just got up and started dancing on the table. This is like, how old is he now? Like 70? I don't know. And he goes, and he said something like, remember everyone, um, we're all young. And then he just runs across like a long wooden table in the middle of the seminar. And everyone's like, this guy's crazy. Or, when he jumped into it's less about the way he distills wisdom, which I think someone like Elon Musk is very good at. And the
Yeah.
way that you get the vibe and energy of the way he lives his life, even his response to my question, he's like, honestly, I think it's just luck. Like,
Mhm.
you see the difference in perspective, right? With like, for example, Elon, who would think very cerebrally about something, to
Yeah.
Richard feel his way and kind of, I'm sure he does think cerebrally about things, but he's very much also, hey, this is a short life. I can never understand it all, and that's okay. And I'm here to have a good time, not just a long time.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. That's great. I love that, man. Yeah. And a lot of it, again, there's no right or wrong answer, like you said, right? But I think that's really powerful, right? Just to go with your intuition more and flow and not always think you need to know the answers because none of us know all the answers, obviously, right? So that's great.
yeah.
Dude, is it true you were a former monk? I read this somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. So, when I was in Australia, I grew up in Australia, and you know, in the phase of my life where I wanted to separate from my parents, young lion trying to go out, I experienced a lot of unhappiness being in a constrained. It was a very constrained country, not country, I guess like environment. The whole auspices of being very smart and in Australia was
Mm.
become a lawyer, become a doctor. Went to the best law school in Australia, the University of Sydney. All these bright kids getting sucked up by the bankers, etc. And I was like, man, is that what my life is going to look like? Like, I didn't particularly want this. So I didn't know how to get out because I didn't have the money. So what I ended up doing was I negotiated with a law firm in London. That's how I got to London in the first place. I was like, look, I'll come work. All the banks want me, but I'll come be a lawyer instead in London, as long as you buy me a trip to Africa to go live with this monk for several months.
Wow.
And they're like, that's some weird shit. But but hey, like we get free labor, like not free, but we get cheap labor, cheap, like heavy hitting intellectual capital because the Australian and British law systems are the same, right? So
Yeah.
they can drain. So we want you, we'll pay the price. It would honestly, like I was getting paid such a pittance of a salary, but like they paid for my trip there. It cost they were gonna have to pay for my trip anyway, but via Africa was like an extra 600, 700 pounds. I don't know, which was a lot for a fucking kid back then.
Yep.
So I went there, ended up going to rural Ghana, and then the monk. I just wanted to hang out with him. I didn't intend to become a monk, but he ended up giving me training because he and I were one of the only two people within the village who spoke fluent English, so we would hang out a lot. And so,
Mm.
it was my first experience. And at the end of it, he made me basically into like what you call a acharya monk, like a level one monk, if you like, or
Cool.
um yeah, so that's kind of what happened.
That's awesome. Any rituals or practices or thoughts or lessons that you still carry with you to this day from that?
I mean, every day it was a practice of waking up early, yoga, meditation, scripture reading, good works after that. Like you had to exist in
Uh,
society. That was the thing. Good works. And then towards the afternoon, the exact same thing, except in reverse. So scripture reading, meditation, and then contemplation. And then I would have sessions with him where we would talk about like what the things I'd learned, the like almost like philosophically, and then going to and then sleeping and then starting again the next day. But did you ask me what I learned or what?
just any lessons or rituals or practices that you still
No,
carry to
actually,
this day?
so like I wouldn't do yoga again because I'm doing functional patterns now.
Yeah.
But I think it was more the states of mind that I was able to get to. So through that level of meditation, I got to very calm states of mind, and I realized that I could be that there was more to life, there was more to my experience of reality than just becoming a banker or a lawyer or something like that. And not that those things were wrong, but there was a multifarious, there were multifarious paths which I could have taken,
Yeah.
which had nothing to do with them, which were perfectly okay and would have led to a great life as well, you know? And so being in those states of mind of pure happiness or bliss, as you would say, like, you know, from meditation, or a deep crispness of reality that can be
Yeah.
achieved via that sort of meditation was, you know, quite an awesome experience. So I wouldn't say that there was a takeaway from it, except that there are diverse paths that you can take, none of which are wrong.
Yep.
But more an experiential thing, which sort of enriched again my understanding of the world, because I played that game, so I understand it. So when
Mm.
people say that to me, I understand what they're talking about. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's that. But the problem is when people derive significance from it, right? You're like, oh, I'm
Yep.
this fucking monk dude, blah blah blah. I could very well be that monk dude,
Yep.
but you know, that sucks. I would rather like choke myself. Yeah.
Do you still meditate today?
I do it in a different way. So I use a new calm machine.
Oh,
And
that's
then when I
great.
wake up in the morning, I have a genetic predisposition to waking up in the morning and not waking up in the morning and not being able to go to sleep again. So oftentimes I'll just lie in bed, but then I will think about thoughts and concepts and philosophies, etc. And often, or I will sometimes do what's called yoga nidra, which is not really yoga. It's
Yep.
just the tracking of your your body, the tracking of your body, if you like. Does that make sense? Like,
Yep.
you should just Google it if you don't know. It's, yeah. So I do things like that. I find that to be quite good. And you know, analyzing, it allows me to slow down and analyze the responses that I have to certain things that are happening within my life. Like
Mm.
if I'm upset about something, etc., right? Being upset about something or feeling anxiety is not in and of itself a bad thing. It might be an indication that something's fucking up, or you need to reinterpret an event, or there's something, you know, those are things which I occasionally do. I occasionally mull on during my meditations.
Mm. I love that. That's awesome. Do you have a structure to your day you like to follow, or do you kind of just flow with each day, or is it a little bit of
No,
both?
I do have a structure, but I wouldn't be prescriptive about it to other people because it's unique to me.
Yep,
So,
for
for
sure.
example, when I wake up just like I've had a cup of coffee. I'm like on immediately,
Yeah.
right? So I try and do the most important things, or get rid of a lot of things to do in my day.
Yep.
So I do try and get through email. I do try and get through, like, when I come on. Actually, before that, if I wake up and I can get those meditative states, then I will reflect on things more internal. Then I'll get to the more like active states, you know, move things. Then I will work out. Now, the thing is, as well, like, asking me that question may not help your listeners, because I'm in a sort of more post-economic part of my life, right?
Yep.
So I'm optimizing for different things here. I'm not optimizing for longevity, for happiness, for other factors, for relationships, etc. When I was optimizing for work and wealth, this is a completely different ball game, right? So you asked me about my rituals. This is what I do, but you also, you know, it doesn't reflect the rituals when I was on the up and up. It reflects the rituals when my objectives are as they are now, which is
Yep.
more towards the pursuit of wisdom and happiness, as opposed to the pursuit of economic means.
Yep, for sure. I agree. No, I think everybody, like you just said, right? Everybody needs to have their own. It's like a blue, it's like a thumbprint, right? We all have our own customized thing that works for us, right? And even I think it's cool just the fact that you. Some people don't, some people do. And again, I don't think it's good or bad, but I like the fact that you do have a structure and systems for your life, right? So for when you were focused on optimizing for economic growth, you had a system for that and a structure for that. And now you're more optimizing for wisdom,
My
I think,
system
like
and
you said.
structure was very independent to me, right?
Yeah.
So I would what everyone is doing. I give it a try.
Yep.
Pomodoro technique does not work for me for shit,
Yep.
right? So, like, the thing is, you gotta not take, life won't give you prescriptions. Sometimes it'll give you a little bit of prescriptions. You can take those as a win, right? As Kapil Gupta says. But life will give you like signposts, and like then you have to figure out how to be more uniquely, iconically you. And
Yeah.
when you figure that out, that will create the results that not only you want, but results that you never knew you wanted, that you can achieve, which will create like a life which is unique and iconic to you, which is what
Mm.
you really want, right? Like
Yep.
people like, I would love to be rich like X. Nah, bro, I want to be rich like me, right? Like, and the way I do it, right? And this is one of the things I would say, like, one of the biggest failings, I think, is when people want things to happen in a specific way and it's against their spirit, it's against their iconism, right? Dude, my chief of staff is a millionaire, will soon be a multimillionaire. You know, the richest guy I know personally as one of my best friends, his name's Conrad Whelan.
Yeah.
And dude, he never wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? He just joined two companies. The first was Uber and the second was Nillion as the founding engineer, basically. You know, like I know so many people who just need to be the entrepreneur because they've bought into this bullshit Hollywood story. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so, I would say that like thinking around doing things the way that but as a second in charge, or I don't even know how you would say to him, as an engineering resource, the guy is like the best ever, but he's making the choice himself because he's like, dude, I don't want to be a founder of Uber.
Yeah.
He's worth like near $1 billion anyway. Who cares? Right. So he's not like Gary the Travis Rich or well known. Doesn't matter. He was still the founding engineer, and he came with a lot less stress, and he was very much in line with his personality.
Mm.
You see what I mean?
Yep.
I know guys who need to be the entrepreneur, and they're suffering because of it.
Yeah.
You know, they're suffering because of it, and dude, it's just you're buying into the wrong stories.
I love that.
That's
I love,
that's the thing. That's a big thing I'm doing with my life now, like assessing the stories that Hollywood is funny because I was watching Gladiator the other day, and it was hard to enjoy it because I was like, what are the stories that Hollywood is exploiting into my brain directly through this movie now? Oh, give up your entire life for the dream of Rome. Like that was like, oh, that sort of sacrifice is noble. Or I know there was another one where it was like I don't know. There were several weird ones, some of which are widely accepted, where I was like, I can see that they're pushing this narrative,
yeah.
you know, but so the narrative of self-sacrifice, the narrative of being in love with someone for your entire life without having any there's no like there's nothing between you guys, right? But having that love between, like, that's a fucking Hollywood dream, bro. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And it's like there must be like limitations to that sort of thinking, or
Yep.
at least some. So anyway, so I spend a lot of my time now thinking about like stories and how like my upbringing culture has led to specific stories, and how those stories hold me back, because they create a world around me which is opposite to the truth.
Mm. I love that, man. I agree. I was reading your tweet thread about hanging around successful people to become successful is wrong, right? And focusing on people that successful people that help other people become more successful as
That's
well.
that's a great one. That's a great one, bro. I can't tell you how important that is.
Yep.
I can't how important
And
that
I
is.
thought of it though, because you at the bottom of it, you have the clip from Gladiator where he says, "The time for honoring yourself will soon be at an end, sire." Right? Where it's like,
Right.
I
Yeah, yeah. You
love that,
have to
man.
you have to see people for what they are and utilize them for what they are. And I don't mean that in a like pure utilitarian way.
Yeah.
Dude, if people utilize me the way I want to be utilized, I'm happy for them to do so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm genuinely kind of happy to do it for free a lot of the time. So it's like, how you are utilized is such a critical part, and how you perceive and utilize other people is so, it's not just about, hey, don't hang around with that successful person.
Yeah.
It's about find out how they can be utilized best, that they want to, and that you can derive value from as well.
Yeah.
Like I said, these things, they're more like complex in their application.
Yep. How do you want to be utilized at this stage of your life?
Um, it's a good question. I think right now I'm in an exploratory phase of, um, you know, I've reached my economic goals. You could always make more money, but I'm more thinking about, like, I've started so many companies now that I'm like, why did I do that? What was I trying to prove to someone? You know what I mean? Like, why? And then it made me shrink away from the public. I was actually open. This is why this podcast is very unique. Like, I wouldn't do this unless you were a friend and you were a little bit dogged at getting me on this podcast, and that you had actually, like, we had a session together with yourself and your girlfriend, and I felt
Yeah.
somewhat obliged to do the same thing. So I was like, fuck, I gotta get on this podcast. But typically,
I'm happy it worked.
typically, yeah. No, I think it's a good thing that you're doing, but I'm not like within the phase of wanting to be known for the things that I've created, right?
Yeah.
Wanting
I thought
to,
it'd be just a little different because I wasn't going to, obviously, this whole hour, right? Like, I'm not focused on your business and like the typical
I
things people ask you about, right? So I thought it'd be cool for that way. But go ahead.
yeah. No, no, I'm happy to be on here talking to you, and I hope it adds value to you. But I think, I'm in an exploratory phase now of thinking about what I want to do with the rest of my life. Sounds very first world fucking problem-y, and this is not the where I came from, but it is just where I find myself now, and really assessing what I want to do with my relationships, both romantic and familial and friendships, and how I want to design a life that optimizes things I want to do. Now, that does not necessarily mean not building something. It means that I need to take a critical mind as to why I would do that. Because before this, it was like, shit, I'm doing like so. In answer to your question, I don't know, because I'm in a exploratory phase of analyzing self motivations.
Yeah.
And once I figure that out, then it will be clear, because I'll have a clear direction.
Yep.
But in general, look, I like adding value to people. So if there's something that if there's a question that I can help answer, then I'm happy to provide my perspective and my thinking on it, especially if it pertains to, stories or issues or real issues around things like, um, money, relationships, health, etc. Like the core tenets of life,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. I love that, which you're great at too. And you have a treasure trove of wisdom and insight for people. That's awesome. So speaking of, where can people reach out to you or contact you? Is that something that you're looking?
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
honestly, my Instagram is kind of my Instagram and my Twitter and my LinkedIn, they're all kind of curated for me to some
Yeah.
degree. But I
Yeah.
do respond to DMs, right? When I get DMs, it's me. But like the I don't really, I have a team that manages a lot of the social media stuff,
Yeah.
just because companies that are quite public now, well known, and having been a founder or on the founding team of these companies is somewhat important for their public profile. So I
Yeah.
have that managed. And so yeah, you could find me on Andrew Massa on Instagram, or Andrew Masanto at Twitter. And you can follow, you can have those you can give those links out, and that's where I can be found right now.
Awesome, man. Amazing. And what's a final parting thoughts or you want to leave the audience with for to close the show?
I would be like, life's too short, just be iconic.
Mm,
That's me up there. That was a pretty
nice.
iconic.
Are you the
Right?
white one or the black one?
I'm in the suit jumping off a
Oh,
boat.
sick. I love that, dude. Life's too short. Be iconic. Amazing, man. Well, I appreciate your time, man. I know you're really busy with a lot of things, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with everybody. I know it's going to add a lot of value to people's lives.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you too.
Absolutely, man.